welcome to your fourth video. In today's video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be solving equations that have variables on the left side and variables on the right side. Our objective today is to solve equations with variables on each side. The standard we're going to be addressing is 8th grade equivalent expression standard number 7, 7a, and 7b. Before we get started, let's go over some rules about how to do this, and then we're going to look at some problems, okay? So make sure you copy down the next slide. We're going to cover some rules, and then we're going to start doing some examples. For today's example, we have 3 different rules that we're going to try to follow when solving the problem. The first rule that we're going to try to solve is typically we always want to move the smaller variable to the larger variable by either adding it or subtracting it. After we move the smaller variable to the larger variable by adding that variable or subtracting that variable, the next thing we want to do is on the side that our variable is on now, we want to move any number that's not with the variable by either adding or subtracting that number. After we do that, the final thing we want to do is we want to get rid of any number next to the variable by multiplying or dividing. So these 3 steps will typically get us to our answer with what we're doing for this lesson. Sometimes we might not do step 1 first because sometimes we'll have a variable that's all alone and there's nothing with it. So in that case, you want to take the variable from the other side and move it to that variable. And we'll kind of see that in our first example. So with that being said, let's start our first example. In our first example, we're going to be solving the equation 8 plus 4d equals 5d. And the very first thing that we want to actually do is we do want to move the variable, but in this case, since we have a variable that's all by itself, we want to move this variable to the same side that that variable that's all by itself is at. And to move a variable, all you got to do is either add it or subtract it. So we draw a line through our equal sign, and we say if we want to get rid of 4d's, and it's a positive 4d, we do the opposite. Well, the opposite of positive 4d is minus 4d or negative 4d. And if we subtract 4d on one side, we subtract 4d's on the other side. 4d's minus 4d's cancel out. We're left with 8 on the left side equals 5 minus 4, 1d. And that's the answer to our problem here. One letter d is equal to 8. And in this case, this is where we get rid of the variable that's with the number. Even if it was bigger, we would have still got rid of this number, and then we would solve for the variable. Because what happens is, if we ever have a variable by itself, you want to move the other variable to that side, even without the rule of typically moving the smaller one. So this is our answer to the very first problem. In example 2, we're going to be solving the equation 7x plus 4 equals 9. I would like you to go ahead, pause the video, try this problem on your own. We're going to go ahead and solve this problem. So hopefully you tried it on your own. We're going to continue on. So what we're going to do, we're going to draw a line through the equal sign, and we're going to get rid of this variable because this variable is all by itself. To get rid of this variable, we're going to do the opposite of what we see. So if we add 7x's, it's not going to go away. It's going to become 14x's. So instead of adding 7x's, we're going to subtract 7x's. And notice that we put x's under x's. If we subtract 7x's on one side, we have to subtract 7x's on the other side. 7x's take away 7x's, we have no x's left. 4, not anything happening to it, so we drop it down. 9x's take out 7x's, we still have 2x's. So in this case, we're able to move that variable to the other side, and now we still have something left to get rid of. Our goal is always to get the variable by itself. So we need to get rid of this 2 that's with x. Well, the 2 is multiplying by x. So to get rid of multiplication, we do the opposite. We divide by 2, divide by 2. X equals 4 divided by 2 is 2. Hopefully that's the answer you got if you worked on this on your own. If you did, great job. You're on the right track and you're in the right spot. In example 3, we're going to be solving this problem here. I've already drawn a line through the equal sign so you can see the difference between the left side and the right side. We have 6n on the left side. We have 4n on the right side. We have a -1 on the left and a -5 on the right. And what we're going to do is we're going to follow those 3 rules that we wrote down at the very beginning of this lesson. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the smaller variable by either adding it or subtracting it. Now, it is possible to get rid of the bigger variable, but if you get rid of the bigger variable, typically you're going to have to work with a negative number, and a lot of times when we're doing math, we sometimes mess up those. So if you get rid of the smaller number, you most likely won't have to deal with negatives, so that's why I say get rid of the smaller number. So we look at this and we say this is 6n's. That's 4n's. 4n's is smaller than 6n's. So this is what we're going to get rid of. Well, we're either going to add it or subtract it to get rid of it. Well, if I add it, I'll have 8n. That doesn't go away. So we need to get rid of it, so we're going to subtract it. So we subtract 4n on one side, subtract 4n on the other side. 4n's minus 4n's cancels out. 6n's minus 4n, that's 2n. We still have this negative 1, it just drops down. We still have this negative 5, it just comes down as well. Now, notice what happened. We now only have the variable on the left side. Step 2 says get rid of the number that's on the same side as the variable. So here's the variable, but it doesn't have the variable. That guy. To get rid of that, we're either going to add it or subtract it. Well, if it's a negative 1, I'm going to add it. So we add 1, add 1. This cancels out. We have 2n's equals a negative 5 plus 1. Now, if you don't know this answer, you might want to type it in your calculator exactly how I see. Negative 5 plus 1. I know that anytime the signs are opposite, I take the big number, 5, minus the small number, get 4, and I keep the sign of the bigger number. So this is a negative 4. Last thing I got to do is I have to get rid of the number that's with the variable, and we get rid of that number by either adding or multiplying or dividing it. So in this case, we're going to divide by 2, divide by 2. N is equal to a negative 4 divided by 2, that's negative 2. So in this case, our variable is negative 2. And that's the answer to this problem. On the next example, I'd like you to go ahead and try it on your own. Think about the rules. First rule, get rid of the smaller variable. Second rule, get rid of the number on the same side of the variable. And third rule, get rid of the number with the variable by either multiplying or dividing. So let's take a look at example number 4. In example 4, this is the example I want you to try on your own. Try following those 3 steps that I gave you. First step, get rid of the smaller variable. So look at the board behind me and try to figure out which one of those is the smaller variable. You want to get rid of that variable by adding or subtracting. Next step after you do that, get rid of the number on the same side of the variable by either adding or subtracting. And then third step, get rid of the number with the variable by multiplying or dividing. So pause this video, try it on your own, play this video, and check to see if you got the right answer. I'm going to go ahead and solve this problem. Draw a line through my equal sign. I have 3x's, 8x's. I'm only looking at the variable. 3x's is smaller than 8x's, so this is the one I'm going to get rid of. To get rid of 3x's, I'm going to do the opposite of what I see. And since that's a positive, I'm going to make it negative. And if I make it negative on one side, I make it negative on the other side. 3x's, take away 3x's, that's no x's. We still have negative 2 equals 8x's, take away 3x's, that's 5x's. We still have 13, just drop that down. Now, second step. Get rid of the number on the same side that doesn't have the variable, this number here. Since it says plus 13, I'm going to subtract 13. If I subtract 13 from one side, I subtract 13 from the other. 13 minus 13 cancels out. I still have 5x's, so I go ahead and I bring those down. Negative 2 minus 13 more is negative 15. So second step's done. Third step, get rid of the number with the variable by multiplying or dividing. Since this number is multiplying, I'm going to divide by that number. Divide by that number. We get x, or 1x, equals a negative 15 divided by 5. That's negative 3. And that's my answer to this problem. So far, hopefully you guys are getting the right answers. If you aren't, make sure you're asking questions in the classroom so that way you know how to do these problems. We got 2 more examples to do, and you guys are already done for today. In example 5, in order to do this problem, one thing you should know, when working with fractions, it's always a good rule of thumb to make them have common denominators right from the beginning. Rather than trying to solve it, you might want to make them have common denominators before you actually begin. So, I'm going to look at these 2 fractions. I have 6 and I have 3, and I always ask myself, can I take the small number and make it go up to that big number on the bottom? Can I make 3 go to 6? And in this case, I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2/3 and I'm going to multiply 2/3 by 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top. 2 times 2, that's 4. 3 times 2, that's 6. So in reality, this right here is actually 4/6. So I'm going to rewrite my problem. I have 4/6x minus 1 equals 9 minus 1/6x. So now it's going to be easier to work with. Since we have the same denominators, what we want to do is we want to look at our fractions and say which one's bigger, which one's smaller, and follow rule 1, then rule 2, then rule 3. So I draw a line through my equal sign. I look at my fraction, or I look at my variables in this case. I have 4/6 and a negative 1/6. So I'm going to get rid of a negative 1 by doing the opposite. I'm going to add 1/6x. I'm going to add 1/6x. If I have 4/6 and I add 1/6, I now have 5/6. X minus 1 equals 9. This cancels out. Now I want to get rid of this minus 1. So to get rid of a minus 1, I add 1. Add 1. This cancels out as well. I still have 5/6x equals 9 plus 1 is 10. Now, we learned in the very first lesson, to get rid of a fraction next to a variable, we actually need to multiply by its inverse. So we're going to multiply 5/6 by its inverse on both sides. So we're going to multiply by 6/5 times 6/5. This cancels out, and we get x equals, and I'm going to do it the way that we were taught. I'm going to put, I'm actually going to write my answer more over here so we can see it. X equals 10 times 6, that's 60. 1 times 5, that's 5. So our x is equal to 60 divided by 5. In this case, x equals 12. And that's because 5 times 12 equals 60. And that's the answer to this problem. We're going to do one more with the fraction, and that's it for this lesson. In example 6, which is our final example, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be solving one more that has a fraction with our variable. And notice again, the variables are on both sides. One of the things I just showed you in the previous example, not video, but previous example, was that you want to first make sure that your fractions are common denominators before you even start the problem. So we're going to look at our 2 fractions, 3/4 and 1/3, and we're going to look at the denominators and say, where do 3 and 4 meet? And hopefully you guys know that 3 and 4 both meet at 12. So I'm going to take this fraction and I'm going to multiply it by 3/3. 3 times 3, that's 9. 4 times 3, that's 12. I'm going to take this fraction and multiply it by 4/4. 1 times 4, that's 4. 3 times 4, that's 12. Now I'm going to rewrite this problem with these fractions right here back in these spots here. So I have 9/12 x plus 2 equals 7 plus 4/12 x. Now we just follow rule 1. Get rid of the smaller variable. We have 9/12 x and 4/12 x. 4/12 x is smaller, so we're going to get rid of that. I'm going to draw a line through our equal sign, and to get rid of a plus 4/12 x, we're going to minus 4/12 x. And if we subtract 4/12 x on one side, we subtract 4/12 x on the other. 9 minus 4, that's 5/12 x, plus 2 equals 7. Next thing we want to do, we want to get rid of this plus 2. So we're going to subtract 2, subtract 2. This cancels out, and we have 5/12 x equals 7 minus 2 is 5. We're almost there. Last thing we gotta do is get rid of a fraction next to a variable, and to get rid of a fraction next to a variable, we multiply by its inverse. So we're gonna multiply by 12 over 5 times 12 over 5. And I already put my 5 over 1 to make that a fraction. My x is going to equal 5 times 12, that's 60. 1 times 5, that's 5. So in this case, my x equals kind of like the last example, 60 divided by 5. So this means x equals 12 once again. So in this problem, our answer is x equals 12. That's it for this lesson. Hopefully you guys liked this video. It was pretty short. Got right to the point. If you have any questions, make sure you ask them here in class. And I will see you in class.